We've just walked the 780-kilometre Camino de Santiago from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port in France to Santiago de Compostela. Now we continue west for a further 90 kilometres to Finisterre. Good morning. That was our first proper marker. We've been going about 25 minutes and probably about a kilometre just out of the town centre, and that signpost is pointing to, or giving the distance to Muxia and Finisterre, and we're off to Finisterre. Back out on the trails, time to reflect on the Camino Frances as we head along the Camino de Finisterre. It will take us 3 days, 2 nights to reach the lighthouse at Finisterre, often referred to as the end of the world. The trails are quiet, very quiet, a huge contrast from our previous days on the most popular section of the Camino Frances from Sarria to Santiago. By comparison, of over 530,000 pilgrims that walked to Camino de Santiago in 2025, 240,000 walked at least the last 100 kilometres of the Camino Frances, and only an estimated 4,000 to 5,000 continue walking from Santiago to Finisterre. The Camino de Finisterre isn't officially recognised by the Church as a pilgrimage in the same way as routes to Santiago, but it has been walked for centuries, first by Romans, then by medieval pilgrims who believed this was the end of the known world. Unlike the main Camino, there are no cathedrals. Churches are small and local, often Romanesque in style, simple and functional. The focus shifts away from grand buildings and towards the landscape itself. Once clear of Santiago, the route settles into rural Galicia, wooded paths, eucalyptus forests, small valleys and quiet farmland. The walking is gentle, rarely dramatic, shaped more by rivers and old tracks than by mountains or monuments. We cross the Ponte Vella, also known as the Puente Romano, though what we're actually walking on is mostly medieval. The original Roman bridge dates back to the 1st century, which explains the name, even if the Romans themselves would struggle to recognise it now. It spans the River Minho, with 7 arches. One of them is noticeably larger than the rest, a result of later rebuilding after floods. On reaching Negreira, we find one of the few actual supermarkets on this section of the Camino. After checking the map, we realised we'd need food for the next 36 hours. There's little between here and Finisterre. We ate lunch in a nearby park to avoid carrying it any further than necessary. We were blessed with good weather, almost too good. Hot, windless, and not exactly ideal for walking. Finisterre, or Finisterre in Latin, means end of the earth. In Galician, it's Fisterra, the name on local signs. In English texts, you'll see Finisterre. Same place, same meaning, just different languages. According to the weather report, it's about 28 degrees. It's supposed to be getting up to, I think, 31 a bit later on this afternoon, so it's really hot. There's not a lot of wind at the moment, but it's 12:30 and we've only got 4 kilometres to go. So we'll be there in the next hour or so, literally just as it's getting to the hottest part of the day. But we're sweating nicely. And as soon as we get there, it's, well, probably a cold shower and then sit outside in the shade somewhere and enjoy the rest of the day. You've got to enjoy it. Beautiful day. When we reached the Albergue, the door was already open. No ritual pavement sitting today. Cold drinks followed, and the afternoon passed quickly, researching post-Camino beach options, an activity that required surprisingly little effort. Good morning. Today it's another 6 o'clock start and we're heading the 28 kilometres to O Logoso. It's very misty at the moment. It's due to be misty all day, I think, or at least until about lunchtime, so it's going to be a lot cooler than yesterday. Just arrived to this this little viewpoint here. Although the views aren't, well, there aren't any views really, but at the moment at least. It's lunchtime, but not because it's lunchtime, it's because it's raining and we're sat in this bus shelter here. So it just started raining, it's going to stop shortly, but we just want to keep dry. From Oliveira, the path starts to climb again, following a high ridge that overlooks the Chalice River Valley. It's a landscape defined by utility as much as beauty. Huge wind turbines line the hills, and you get the occasional glimpses of the reservoirs tucked in the valley below. The climb is steady, eventually leading us into the tiny hamlet of O Logoso. Most people would have stopped in the larger village of Oliveira, but we pushed on an extra few kilometres to stay here. There isn't much more than a single albergue and a bar, but that's the appeal. It feels like a quiet outpost, with a few of us still heading west. And as the sun dipped over the hills, the atmosphere was exactly what we needed. Isolated, peaceful, and just a day away from the coast. Good morning. So we left at about 5:40 this morning, heading to Finisterre. This will be the end of our trip for now. You probably can't see me very well because it's still quite dark, but here we have the junction where left you go to Finisterre and right you go to Muxia. Leaving the rural interior behind, the path begins a long, steady descent towards the coast. The first real sign that we're approaching the Atlantic is the town of Sea. It's a working port town, a bit of a shock to the system after days of quiet eucalyptus forests and small Galician hamlets. As you drop down into the town, you get your first proper view of the ocean and the bay. It's a steep walk down, rough on the knees if you've already done 800 kilometres, but seeing the water for the first time changes the energy of the walk. Suddenly, the end of the world feels like a physical reality rather than a concept on a map. Comparing this to the Camino Frances, the experience is almost entirely different. Where the Frances is social, bustling, and steeped in grand religious history, the walk to Finisterre is solitary and contemplative. You aren't walking towards a cathedral finish line, you're walking towards an edge. People often ask if these extra 3 days are worth it if you've already walked nearly 800 kilometres. For us, the answer was definitely yes. It provides a much needed buffer between the intensity of arriving in Santiago and the reality of going home. It allows the achievement to actually sink in. If you have the time and your feet are still holding up, I'd recommend it every time. It's a closing chapter the journey deserves. At the first beach, Gabby made a beeline for the sea. She made it in waist deep into the Atlantic before retreating quickly, discovering it was colder than it looked. I was sensible and didn't even dip my toes in. Heading along the beautiful sandy beaches of Langostera, we entered the town of Finisterre, briefly stopping at our albergue before carrying on the final 3.5 kilometres to Cape Finisterre, the westernmost point of mainland Spain, marked by its lighthouse, symbolising the ancient end of the world. It felt slightly odd that something so big ended in a car park full of day trippers and fridge magnets. Still, we'd done it. At the lighthouse, we took our photo beside the 0 kilometre marker and stood there longer than expected, watching the Atlantic stretch away in front of us. We'd walked from the Pyrenees to this point, day after day, focusing only on the next step, the next village, the next bed. Standing at the edge of the land, the scale of it all finally settled in. The distance, the time, and everything that had been quietly carried along the way. There was nothing left to walk towards. Tomorrow is a rest day, a real one. No alarm, no backpacks. Just the beach and sound of the sea, and the unfamiliar feeling of having reached the end.